We're living in a trust recession, a term that I've heard a few times, but which I feel perfectly describes where we are now. Why should businesses care? And how can they create better content that helps drive customers to the purchase point when people simply don't believe what they see? Let's discuss. Now, I intended to start this video with some examples of content that are, frankly, unbelievable. But what I found was that there are so many. It made me wonder why I'm seeing so much. Now, discussing why there's so much content that feels unreal is a huge topic. Much too long for this kind of video. And we could talk about overseas interference in social media, the dissemination of fake news, and modern day competitor sabotage if you like. But I think the last few weeks have really shown how important communications and propaganda strategy is to international matters. Not only have I watched aghast at the horrors of war, but I've seen how social media is being used to paint pictures of what a side wants people to believe, and in some cases appear to tell lies about what is happening. Now, in my own life, I'm inundated with deepfake ads on TikTok, some of which are more believable than others. Some are labelled as AI generated, but many are not. And what can we really believe? Who can we trust? And these are two key questions I now ask whenever I see content. Sadly, social media is the playground of AI and fake news because it's so easy to create it. And perhaps it's because I create content about creating content that I see frequent ads for video tools that are going to help me create scroll-stopping content just by uploading a few images from my camera roll, and frankly without much input from me. The speed at which content needs to be created seems to be absolutely hypersonic for fear of us not reaching whoever we wish to reach. And so we just end up adding to the noise. And when people have so much content to get through, how quickly are they scrolling past? And how much attention are people paying to it? It's kind of a self-fulfilling doom loop. So it's no wonder that people turn to AI to generate content quickly. Perhaps the speed at which people consume what they're seeing means they're not paying enough attention to the content itself and, are not overly analysing it. Is that a problem? Well, I think it kind of is. Now look, we've got to accept that you first need to get attention before anything else. But at some point in the journey, the customer is going to pause and consider the decision that they're making. They'll look at what's on offer, who's providing it. They'll review evidence and try and find out whether or not it's worth it. They'll probably move across multiple marketing channels from social media to email to website to brochure, whatever is their whim at the time in order to meet that current need to find out information and help them make the decision. And so at that point, suddenly the journey slows and the potential customer starts to truly digest what's in front of them. That's when they start to notice. So do customers really care if something is AI generated? Well, for me, this depends entirely on whether the person looking at it feels like they're being deceived. So let's look at a few examples. So example number one, Coca-Cola's Christmas commercial. Now I've talked about this before, but despite the noise around it, I actually don't think their use of AI really affects people and whether or not they're going to drink Coke. And that's because the brand has enough equity and consumers have a big enough habit to survive any criticism around how many wheels a truck has or whether it replaced any creative jobs. Now, my second example is a wild one. At first glance, it's reasonable. A man talks to camera about the qualities of pies being advertised, and this is an organic post, by the way. But look closer and you'll notice things like the ultra smooth skin, how the guy's lips don't close when making a p sound, and the perfect arrangement of pies on the tray. But what's really problematic though is the close-up of the pie when he breaks it apart. Very unnatural. And the point is that this is the product being sold. We're not seeing the true product. We're seeing an AI version of the product. So how can we trust what we'll see and what will be the actual product when we receive it. Now, it may be a good representation, but to be honest, I've already been put off by the whole ad, so I'm doubtful about the product too, and likely wouldn't buy it on that basis. Okay, example 3. This is more conceptual really. It's about removing or adding elements to an image or a video. The term AI is such a catch-all term now that people sometimes confuse what is technical product features in an application like Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator as AI when it's not. Now, alterations to images and videos are resolved as images and videos themselves. We've always been doing it. Selectively amending content is where I kind of feel happier. Now, as much as we would love something like an all expenses paid trip to Sydney, maybe that's not within budget, and neither is a trip to the Swiss Alps. But when you want to talk about something like international orders, here's where I think use of generative AI is acceptable. Take a look at this Instagram post here. The images of product are real, they're untouched. It's just the background that's been changed to paint a picture. And why am I okay with it? Well, because businesses that don't have the budget can now take advantage of technology to reduce the financial cost while delivering similar effects to large corporations. So actually what we're doing here is closing the gap between multinational and local businesses. But the key here is not altering the product. So customers can see what is the real product and they can trust what they see. Now, how do you signal to your audience that they can trust what they see? Well, I think there are 2 parts to this as we stand here today. Firstly, I think we have to be open about what is AI and what isn't. Tools like ChatGPT, Adobe Express, and others will now automatically apply something called content credentials to a digitally altered image. Now remember, digitally altering an image doesn't mean AI has been used, but the principle is the same. It's altered in some way and it's helpful to know. So by labeling content as such, your audience can trust that any other content that is not altered really is the real deal, and therefore trust increases. Secondly, make it obvious that your content is real and not using any alterations by perhaps leaving in elements that are obviously human, so the unpolished things. So those ums and ahs and the little stumbles that are a natural part of speech, well, they can be left in. Jerky movements are also something I actually quite like to see now, because do you know what? You don't have the perfect tripod. Maybe you hit the desk and it wobbles the camera. You know, these are all fine to include. Your natural gesticulation, and I am somebody who gesticulates a lot, is authentically you and how you will appear if you meet your audience in real life. So let's just keep them in. Now, at Limelight Media, we've had many discussions about whether or not you should leave a typo in a piece of content, or even if you should deliberately add one. Now, we're not in total agreement on this, I'm not going to lie, but my view personally is if you make a mistake and you don't spot it, well, that's no big deal. You're human. But I also want to be professional, so I will go in and correct it if it's pointed out to me. You see, it's the picture that you paint overall. Ultimately, we're in a time where AI is being used and it has some good uses. 1 or 2 pieces of content certainly won't affect how your audience trusts you, but rather it's the overall picture that you paint over time that builds up trust in your brand and your product. Of course, there's many issues with AI that we need to wrestle with. I saw this little Instagram reel the other day and it just genuinely made me laugh.
Hey, why don't you use AI more often? Well, isn't it destroying the environment? Uh-huh. Isn't it making us dumber? Uh-huh. And wasn't it made by stealing from countless writers and artists? Uh-huh. And isn't it taking people's jobs? Uh-huh. And isn't it becoming so realistic that it's messing with our fabric of reality? Uh-huh. Then no, I think I'm good. Well, you should probably just embrace the new technology.
And it just genuinely made me laugh because I think that's part of the challenge. We're all navigating AI and its use and what's acceptable and what isn't. So if you'd like help navigating that with us and want to consider where your brand should sit within the discussion, add a comment below, reach out to me personally. I'd love to discuss it because I find it a fascinating topic.